Here we are again with another edition of um, letters from the Lubavitcher, letters written by the Lubavitcher Rebbe in response to questions that he got from people of all walks of life. Very fascinating letters. Today's letter was written in December of 1971 during Hanukkah, and the title of it is "Every Nation with Its Mission." So it says, "Greeting and blessing. I received your correspondence, including your most recent letter, in which you write about your background and present situation. I was really gratified to read in your letter about your progress, not only to enrich your knowledge of Judaism, but in accordance with the teachings of our sages, that the essential thing is the deed." So there's a very famous. So I stopped reading the letter. There's a very famous saying, "Maaseh zeikar," that the most important thing in wanting to become closer to God, to practicing Judaism, is to do actions, not to just think about it, but to do it. And those are being Torah and mitzvot. So he continues translating this knowledge and inspiration into daily experience of Torah and mitzvot. Basically living like a Jew, not just contemplating what is it about, but actually doing it. Needless to say, since the Torah is our life and the length of our days, and mitzvot are the things Jews live by, the experience of Torah and mitzvot must be a continuous process and cannot be relegated to certain days in the year, such as Shabbat, Yom Tov, and so on. And so I stopped just to clarify that basically a Jew needs to live as such 24 hours a day, not just when they go to synagogue or go home, they conduct themselves as a Jew, but that they proudly display that they're a Jew wherever they are, where they work, in meetings, that there's a pride in it. And I found sometimes myself in conferences where I'm standing there, and I thought in my head, wow, they might think, wow, this guy he's a little different, but everybody is always very respectful and actually quite impressed that there's still people who stand for values, and people respect when someone is a Jew. Like, for instance, sometimes I have to tell someone, I'm sorry, I have to go and pray. It's the time of day I have to pray. Or some men, they when they're married, they don't shake hands with women. So, for instance, sometimes in a meeting, a woman wants to shake my hand. I say, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I'm married. In Jewish tradition, we're not allowed to do it. People respect these values. So the idea here is that when you're a Jew, you conduct yourself as such, and you're not embarrassed about it. You're quite opposite, proud of it. So with regard to the Rebbe continues, with regard to various points and questions raised in your letter, it is, of course, difficult to explain such things adequately by correspondence. However, I will mention several points after a brief introduction. If one considers the world in which we live, the world at large, as well as the small world, namely man, it becomes evident that there is no uniformity, but many differences, both external as well as internal. Moreover, everything and every person has its own purpose and task, and this does not make anyone any more or less important, for all are important in the totality of things, just as every organ of the body is important. Indeed, if one member would wish to change his function, it would not only disturb his own personal harmony, but it would also disturb the total harmony. Imagine for a moment what would happen if the brain would wish to do the work of the heart to pump blood. It certainly would be disastrous, for even an extra tiny drop of blood in the brain would be dangerous, whereas the heart must always have an ample supply of blood. Similarly, if the heart would wish to do the work of the digestive organs, where even a tiny speck of food would be dangerous to the heart, and so on. So now the Rebbe continues. The reason he's giving a metaphor to what he's getting, the point he's getting to, which is the following. The same is true with regards to Torah and mitzvah, as well as in regard to the destiny of the Jewish people and its place in the family of nations. For reasons best known to God himself, he wished that there should be many nations in the world, but only one Jewish people, and a people who should be separated and different from all the other nations, with a destiny and function of its own. even in the future messianic era, as has been prophesied by our prophets, there will be a distinction between the Jewish people and non-Jews, where the Jews will retain the 613 mitzvot, whereas the Gentiles have to observe only 7 commandments with all their ramification, which is also no small thing, as explained in various sources. So the Rebbe here touches upon a very, very big point. And the point is that what does it mean to be a Jew, and why am I a Jew, or why can't I be like everybody else? Why do I have to have certain customs or dress a certain way? And the Rebbe is giving it in a very simple way, just like organs of the body, that God created the world with different nations, that each one has their own function, but none of them mean that they're superior to the other. It doesn't mean that because we're Jewish, we're better than the others. We just have a purpose, that we're here to be a light to other nations. That's our purpose. It doesn't mean that the other nations are inferior by no means, and that we have to respect them. But at the same time, because I am Jewish, I have to be Jewish, and I have to remain Jewish, and I have to marry a Jew, because this is what I am. It's like, imagine a tiger would marry an elephant. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't work. As much as they can get along, it wouldn't produce the right animal. So the same thing. So sometimes when we are tempted to be like the other people, to do certain things in ways that are of other people, we should think about that God created the Torah, and he gave a specific manual of how a Jew is to conduct himself or herself in a way that will allow them to be in the greatest harmony with themselves. That because for their soul, it's the best thing. This is what is best for a person who is a Jew. Same thing, like any animal, the best for them is, certain animals are herbivores, certain are carnivores, meaning some of them eat grass, some of them eat meat. They have certain things. Just like for a Jew, to eat kosher is important, whereas for a non-Jew, it's not important, because the soul of a Jew is nourished by the energy of the kosher food, whereas a non-Jew, it doesn't mean anything to them. But it doesn't mean that for the non-Jew it's a bad thing, that they're in any way inferior. They have a different job in this world. So the Rebbe continues, and by the way, and he mentioned something very important, that even though we have 613 mitzvot that we have to fulfill, positive and negative commandments, there are the seven Noahide laws that non-Jews have to abide them by. So they also have their own set of values that they have to live by. So now he continues. The above I trust will answer your question, why should a Jew separate himself and not be involved in the world at large? Indeed, if a Jew should completely separate himself from the world, it would be contrary to the Torah, since among the mitzvah which a Jew is bound to fulfill, there is also the mitzvah that he should try to do all he can to encourage the environment in which he lives, that it will be permeated with the awareness of the above mentioned 7 commandments given to the children of Noah. I said the 7 commandments, we mentioned those before, that these divine commandments with all their ramifications be implemented in daily life. However, this does not mean that a Jew should take over functions which are not his, for the results would be disastrous, as in the analogy of the human body mentioned above. It is due to the failure to realize this, with the resulting confusion, that there is such a great incidence of intermarriage, but it is difficult to dwell at length on such painful matters. So the Rebbe here also touches upon the idea that a Jew is supposed to be, again, a light to other nations. A Jew is supposed to to improve the environment around them just by having the set of values of living by the Torah, being honest, being compassionate, not judging people wrongly, and being honest in business dealings. Just that alone shows that, wow, I also want to believe in God. Non-Jew observes a businessman who's Jewish and sees that person, for instance. It actually happened to me the other day that someone charged us for ice cream, but they forgot like to charge us like 50% of the bill was lower. And the person who was charging us was not Jewish, and I corrected them. And then after that, there was somebody who apparently forgot to pay. So they walked out and they left. And the lady was like, the cashier, she was a little bit frustrated that the person left. We weren't sure if they if they left without paying on purpose or not. So I went outside and I made sure to bring the person back in. And this shows that, as Jews, it's important for us to care about the well-being of another person. It's a business of another person, but it was important for me that we are honest. So these are things that are important to take to heart. But the idea is that why is someone a Jew supposed to marry a Jew is because the soul of a Jew has a certain DNA that is different from a person who's not a Jew. And this is why it doesn't work. And this is why statistically it shows that intermarriage it has the greatest incidence of divorce because the connection is just not there. So anyway, the Rebbe continues. I will only emphasize the point that one's personal convenience, desire, or gratification is no justification to involve oneself in something which is wrong, especially to involve another person, at least of all loved one, in such a situation, even if the other party is agreeable and sincerely so. For no person has a right to harm a second person, even if the latter desires to be harmed. So the Rebbe here is still talking about the idea of a Jew and a non-Jew being in a relationship, whereby the non-Jew is okay with it. Hey, I have no problem. We can do Shabbat. We can you can have your holidays. I'll tag along and come to your family. So the Rebbe is saying that when you subject the person who's not Jewish to having to comply with these values, ultimately it causes them harm. It causes them, it makes them sad, and it causes a lot of anxiety in the relationship. And ultimately, it's very likely to break down. And just because it's convenient for you, that you desire this person, that you love them, so to speak, which are just emotions that are generated by the heart, but in the brain, that is not something you should do. That's why it says in the Jewish tradition that the brain has to rule over the heart. You can't let your heart's desires justify your actions. You have to think with your mind, with your chokhmah, which is your wisdom, the wisdom of the Torah that tells you that I'm a Jew. I need to conduct myself like a Jew. And is it going to really work out if I go with someone who's not Jewish? It won't. Anyway, I trust. So the Rebbe continues, and it's almost the end of the letter. I trust you will not take amiss my writing on something which appears to be at first glance a personal and intimate matter. But since you wrote to me and brought the matter to my attention, I have no right to pass over it in silence. So you can see the Rebbe is a very gentle approach to not offend the person, but it's clear that whoever wrote the letter to them mentioned something about this topic, maybe in passing, maybe hinted at it, that they were interested in or maybe dating someone that was not Jewish. So anyway, so he says next, I would strongly urge you to consult an Orthodox rabbi whose guidance would be in accordance with the will of God, as is clearly spelled out in the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch is what is called the Code of Jewish Law, and to inform him of all the aspects and details of the matter with a view to rectifying it. No doubt the rabbi would also wish to later discuss the matter with your wife. Apparently this person is married. Okay, so it's not dating them. You may rest assured that acting in accordance with our Torah, called the Torah Chaim, which is the living Torah, the law of life, the true guide in life, will be of real benefit to all concerned. In conclusion, I hope that you will accept the above in the spirit that it is offered, stemming from a deep concern which has to permeate one person for another, especially as the commandment of V'ahavta kamocha, to love your fellow as yourself. I would have been greatly remiss if I have not written to you above, although it necessarily had to be conveyed in the very brief terms. all too brief in relation to the importance of it. So the Rebbe is saying that essentially, because I have, it says, a very fundamental principle in Torah is to love your fellow as yourself, meaning to care about them as you would care about yourself. So the Rebbe is looking at any person who is written to him like their own child, and he sees that there's some kind of situation here. We don't know really the situation. It could very well be that this person is married to someone who's not Jewish, and he's pointing to them that why there may be a source of friction, and that this is something to take to heart and to consider it, that by remaining in this marriage, they're not actually showing love to that person, but they're actually causing them pain, and that the pain would gradually grow and become worse. But anyway, so he closes off by talking about the time that we're in, which was the time of Hanukkah. So now that we are in the auspicious days of Hanukkah, recalling the struggle and triumph of Jews over the forces of Hellenism and assimilation which has threatened the very existence of our people, every Jew can take to heart from the message and inspiration of Hanukkah to overcome all difficulties against the odds, as emphasized in Hanukkah prayer, recalling the victory of the few over the many and the physically weak over the mighty and strong. So, as you know, the message of Hanukkah is that they tried to basically cause us to become assimilated into the Hellenist lifestyle and to reject the belief in God. And in the end, the Jews remained true to their faith and true to their loyalty to God, and were able to continue on. And this is what has kept our people here to this very day, despite other nations having tried to assimilate us. And this is why this is kind of the message of this letter, that we do not, the idea of assimilation is something that goes against the Torah, that we need to remain true to our values. And it's not only because, it's because it's essential to our very being. And it's because everybody has a different function in the world. And it's not a negative thing when you tell someone, hey, I'm sorry, I'm Jewish, I can't really be with you. It's not a problem. It's you have your job, I have my job, and I think everybody sees that. Just like someone who is just a regular first year associate at a company can't go and say, I want to be the CEO now. It can't be that. That's not your job. Your job is down here below, and the CEO is someone else. It's same thing in a regiment. You have the Air Force, you have the troops that march on the ground, you have the people who parachute down, you have the people who operate the drones. I mean, everyone has their own job, but the whole idea is that we all together live in harmony and respect one another, even though we are not necessarily mixing with one another, at least on an intimate level. But he said that there's never think that a Jew is supposed to be isolated from the rest of the world. Absolutely not. A Jew is supposed to be mixed in with the world, and to show others by example how it is great to believe in God and to live by the values of being honest, of being compassionate to others. And these are things that are applicable to any person, Jew or non-Jew, and so that's that. So that's the letter, and till the next time, we will read another letter tomorrow. Join us again tomorrow for another amazing letter with the Rebbe.